Good afternoon to everybody today. We have gathered here for an amazing security assessment workshop based off the Nessus tool. And a quick introduction about our expert today. His name is Aditya, and he will be running us through some of the most important features and configurations around the Nessus tool. Though the tool is not an open source tool, there are quite a few things that the tool is still capable of doing. So today's workshop is going to be majorly around that. So without further delay, I'm just going to quickly present my screen to give you a brief about our expert today. I hope you guys can see my screen. So this is our expert today. A quick introduction about him. He's completed his bachelor's in technology in EEE. And he is CE Ed certified, has more than 5+ years experience in the cybersecurity domain. In addition, he's a security researcher, and he's also had various designations like information security analyst, information security engineer, and he currently works for the Nessus, Evolent company as a security administrator. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome Aditya to AntWak's platform, and I'd request him to take over. And whatever questions you guys start to having, please start putting them into the chat, and we'll definitely answer them towards the end of the session. Thank you so much. Aditya, the stage is yours.
Just have a question. If you're gonna share the presentation, or do I have to do that?
I've given you the co-host privileges, so you should be able to share it.
Okay. So I guess all of you can see the screen.
Yep, it's visible.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So without further ado, let's get started with the presentation. So this presentation is a lot more bigger to be concluded in 1 hour, but I will try my best. And just to give you a heads up, Nessus tool is something that you can use for doing vulnerability assessment. But the thing is, there will be, okay, I'll be presenting a lot of other details apart from the just security tool, because what I'm gonna teach you is some points around vulnerability assessment, that you can see how the vulnerability reports are made and how to read them, not just about Nessus, but with every other tool out there. So it'll be sort of a vendor agnostic, but I'll be giving you the examples of Nessus as well, so that you can get started with your vulnerability assessment, because that's the whole agenda. Okay, so these are the contents that I'll be covering today. This is introduction. We'll see what the vulnerability management thing is, how to set up a Nessus tool, and configuring and executing vulnerability, and how to remediate them, and some other terms. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send in the chat, I guess. So who is the moderator?
Yep, that's me, Aditya, Kaushik here.
Kaushik, okay. So do we have that polling system that we discussed, like if I ask?
So yep, I'm just uploading them in the backend. Once it's ready, I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Just run within the tool itself. Till then, we can start the class.
Sure. So should I go ahead with the class?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, great. So before starting the session, I would just like to tell you the difference between 3 terms, that is threat, vulnerability, and risk. So these terms are mostly confused with. So what is a vulnerability? So vulnerability is something that is a weakness or gap in a security program that can be exploited. So that is a vulnerability. And a threat, anything that can exploit that vulnerability is a threat. And what is risk? So the potential damage that comes out of that potential, exploitation is a risk. I know these three terms can be confusing sometimes, but just try to understand them as basic as possible. First comes the vulnerability, then threat, then risk. So vulnerability is a weakness in our system, threat that someone exploits them, and risk the potential damage that happens after someone exploits them. So uh, with these terms cleared up, let's move ahead. So why do we need net vulnerability assessment tools like Nessus? Because hackers use automated tools to probe network for vulnerabilities. So security professionals also must run their own automated tools, okay, to think as hackers and try to grab the vulnerabilities beforehand, before it gets into the hands of hackers. So Nessus is one of the most popular tools available. It's a gold standard actually in the industry, and therefore we use it. Okay, so prerequisites. So this workshop is designed for users who are completely new to Nessus. So if you have some basic idea about what Nessus is, or you've already been working into the domain, you must feel that what I'm going to learn in this workshop, since I already know Nessus, if that's the category you fall in, then I'll try to make it more informative for you. So let's see. Okay, so you should have some basic familiarity with system and just system and network administration. If not, then also it's fine. I'll quickly cover some of the points. So I guess uh, all of our audience have the knowledge about these IP address, network ports, what is a port scanning and all that. Can I get the poll of it? I mean, how many people do know these sort of terms or have heard them before?
Aditya, I think quite a few people are responding on the chat.
Okay, so that makes my job a little bit easier, because I don't have to go in detail in all those topics, but still I'll just cover it very quickly. Okay, so as you know, IP addresses look like these. Sorry for that, but just a silly joke. Okay, so these are the IP addresses. They are private and public IP addresses. TCP/IP is the suite on which IP addresses function. Okay, so this is a subnet table I've just prepared it just in case. Yeah, but that's nothing, just for the reference. We can skip it if you all know what all those terms are. So this is the private range of IP addresses. Okay. What are ports? Ports are used to identify a single network process on a machine. So why we are discussing ports here? Because we are also going to discuss how a vulnerability scanner works, like under the hood of a vulnerability scanner. So that's more important, because learning how a tool works is not the only parameter on how you are going to get success, but you should also know how that the tool works actually from the inside as well. So that will help you a lot. And in later days, when you start configuring the tool and starting you start to use some other open source tools to do the same job. So ports are used to identify network process on a machine. Okay, so if you want to unequivocally identify a process on a network, you need to know the IP port pair. As you know that there are port numbers from 1 to 1024 that are most commonly used ports, and above that there are lots of others. you can use arbitrarily whenever you want. So you can compare the port to the recipient's name on a letter. Whenever you write a letter to a friend, so let's say the address of the friend, the name of the friend is the port. The street address identifies the building. So the IP address is the building, while the person name identifies the final recipient of the letter. So this is a sort of analogy that you can try to analogize with in order to understand what actually ports are. So ports are basically let's say there are several services that are running on the on your laptop. Services such as SSH, or let's say a simple let's say these sort of services are like SSH, FTP protocol, and lots of others. Whenever you click a button on a Windows system, it starts a file or a process. So for every process, there is a port assigned to it on the laptop, on the computer system. Okay, so what is a daemon? A daemon is a program that runs a service. So daemon is a widely used term. Just you need to know what it is. We are not going into the detail for it. So daemon is something program that runs a service. So system administrators can change the daemon configuration. So why do they need to do that? Because sometimes when an attacker wants to get into a machine, so they are most commonly used ports. Okay, like for SSH, port 22 is used. So an attacker can use port 22 to get into a machine, or for example, for say telnet or FTP ports, those are commonly used. Like for HTTP, port 80 is used. So these ports are most commonly used, so everybody knows it. So what system administrators can do sometimes is they can configure the ports. Let's say if the SSH port is 22, they can change it to some other, like say 2325, 2325. Okay, so these sort of ports, if they change it to them, then the hacker will have a difficult time to try to guess what the port is and get into the system. So that's why daemon can be configured. So that's why it is very crucial term to know. Just giving you a brief idea about what it is. So moving on. So I hope that my speed is convenient for everyone in the session. Kaushik, am I going too fast?
Yep. No, it's perfect. I think these are concepts that most of the audience is kind of aware of.
Yeah,
we do have some questions coming in the chat, which we'll take up towards the end of it.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, because this is not an interactive one, so I'm thinking that I'm just speaking to a.
No, that's okay, sir. When we start about the tool, I think it will make more sense.
Okay, yeah. So port scanning. So once we have discussed about what the port is, so let's see what a port scanning is. So it's a process used to determine what TCP or UDP ports are open on a target host. So that is the basic idea of a vulnerability scanner, that it scans the ports on a system. So with that in mind, let's see how a vulnerability scanner works. Like under the hood of a vulnerability scanner, we're gonna see. So port scanning, service detection, and vulnerabilities database lookup. So these three are the points that a vulnerability scanner like Nessus does. So first procedure is port scanning. So the first step is determining if the target hosts are alive and which ports are open on them. To do that, vulnerability scanner performs a port scan to test the open ports on the system. The more accurate the port scan is, the more useful results the vulnerability scanner will get. The second point, the second step that the scanner does is service detection. For every open port found, the vulnerability scanner will send some special probes to determine which application is running on them. So this is very important. If you guys have ever used Nmap, you know how to run all these commands to do the port scanning and service detection, but that's not a topic. So second point is, first the port is scanned for whether it is alive or not. The second point is the scanner determines what services are running on them. Now the third point, for each detected service, also known as daemon, as we discussed above, the scanner queries its database looking for known vulnerability. So every vulnerability scanner has a database which the vendor of the scanner updates on a frequent basis. Okay, so once the service is detected, the scanner queries its database looking for known vulnerabilities. When configuring the scanner, you can configure which vulnerabilities you want to check for. Okay, so there are different plugins available in Nessus which you can, try to configure. Okay, so we'll discuss that later. So during this step, the scanner sends probe to verify if the vulnerability actually exists. This phase is prone to false positives, as some probes could be too mild to effectively identify a real vulnerability. So that's a unfortunate event that we have to face in the case of vulnerability scanning, that there can be false positives. Uh, False positive arise because of many things. Maybe we have not, tuned the vulnerability scanner properly. So we have to fine tune the scanner every time. So that is the thing. So it nobody can teach you how to do that, fine tune the scanner. Yet you're gonna learn it on your by yourself only by doing the scanning over and over, and that just comes with the experience. So with that, I hope you guys got some information on how the vulnerability scanner works, if you didn't have it already. So let's see how to set up Nessus. So setting up a Nessus, so I think it'll take some time, like almost when you first install Nessus on your system, it takes almost half an hour to 45 minutes to configure the plugins, to download the plugins. So don't think it's a good idea that we practically do that right now, because it will take lots of our time. So for that, uh, I have already shared the steps to configure and download Nessus with team AntWak, and I think they'll be sending you over after this session ends. So I'm just gonna go with what the basic process is. So first you have to go to this website, the Nessus website, register yourself with a valid email, because you're gonna receive a activation code. Once you register and get the activation code, you can move ahead to download the executable file on your Windows. So you can also do it on Linux and Mac as well, but we are going with Windows here. You can see how to download on Linux and Mac on its website. On Google, you can search; it's not a big thing. So once you install once you run the installer on the Windows, so a URL port pair will be shown on the terminal. That is obviously localhost. You can run it on localhost. And okay, so once you are done, you will access it. But what happens in case of only Windows, I think in Linux you can access it without creating a firewall rule, but in Windows you have to create a firewall rule. And for that, you can go to these options: Windows administrative tool, firewall option. I have given the um, steps on how to do that. So click on inbound rules here. Let me show you firewall. I have already created the rule actually. So here are the inbound rules. Okay, so this is the rule that I created. You just have to go to the new rule and follow the prompts here. Like you have to create for a port. You can do next because you already know. So let me tell you, Nessus works on port 8834. So TCP port 8834, you're gonna mention the port 8834 here. Once you mention that, so for now, because we are using it for just for learning purpose, so we can just do allow all connections. But if we are going to use for a production environment, then we can uh, do allow the connection if it is secure, or add some other rules as well, that we don't receive traffic from everywhere. So once we follow the prompt ahead next and then finish, so finally it will create a, we can give a name to this rule, like I have done this Nessus manager. So like this, your firewall rule is created, and with this, you can actually use it every time. So there's a couple of commands you're gonna see. So like whenever you want to start Nessus, can use this command in this directory. And if you have to stop it, then just use stop in place of start. Okay. So every time I think you,
Aditya, just sorry to stop you there. Are you showing something in the tool right now?
I'm showing something, no, not on the tool, but I'm
okay, just explaining the steps on the PPT, right?
Yeah, actually, okay. So I'm trying to tell them how to configure the firewall in Windows machine.
Right. The reason is that I think when you were explaining to some students who were thinking that you're also showing on the tool. So yeah, that's why we just wanted to clarify, nothing else.
Okay, so no, this is not on the tool. I'm telling you how to configure the firewall in the Windows machine so that you can access the tool every time.
Cool.
So these are the steps I have already shared with Kaushik, so he'll be sharing with it with you all after the session. So once you do that, and let us go to the tool. Oops, what is this? I cannot see.
It's visible.
It's visible. No, actually, yeah. What is happening is the bar for this Zoom meeting is just covering it up, so that's why I was.
Yeah, I know, I can understand. On the top, if you see, just on the top, you should get an option, stop sharing. You can just temporarily stop sharing, open up the tool, and then start sharing it.
No, it's okay. I've already opened up the tool. So I'm gonna just so remember I told you guys that you have to register your email and your email ID in the Nessus, so where you'll get the activation code. So once you do that, you have to just put in the activation code and give a username and password for the first time when you enter the Nessus. Okay, so I'm gonna use my credentials here. Okay, so finally we are here. So as you can see, we are using it on a local host.
Aditya, I think this is the screen that's not visible. The Nessus tool interface is not showing up. It's still the PPT on the screen.
Okay. Let me share again. I think I have shared only PPT.
Right. So yep. That would also be the reason. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a good picture.
Yep.
So once you open it, you will have to put in your username and password that you're gonna put in for the first time when you launch the tool. Now, if you're able to see the tool, so it's not a very big thing that you can't understand. It's very, GUI based and everything is just in place. So I'll just run you through. So unfortunately, what the problem is, we cannot run on a live system because we don't have the permission for it, and we just cannot use any website or any random website for it. And Nessus is more of a network scanning tool rather than a web application. If you can get this difference. So for web application, that is for websites, Nessus can be used, but it's more of a general purpose for the network scanning. Like say for a corporate network, or you are in a LAN environment or in a remote system. So all those sort of things where endpoints are there, firewalls are there, routers are there, and everything. So Nessus is basically more for that purpose, but it also has capabilities to scan websites as well. Okay, so unfortunately we don't have a VPN created right now so that I can uh, go and scan it, but I will show you how to do it. If you maybe in the future, if we conduct a workshop for longer period of time, we can create a VPN and show you how to do it with the open VPN tool and everything. So is that okay, Kaushik?
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so uh, so here are my scan folder. Here's my scan folder. All scans will be showed here if multiple users are logging in to this website. So my scan folder is this. So you can create a scan. How? Okay. So if you have to create a new scan, let's say. So when we have to create a new scan, so this is a scanner, and in this you will see user defined. So these are the default scan templates provided by Nessus itself. So what it does is, let's say for basic network scan, advanced scan, you can configure it here. Dynamic scan, malware scan, mobile device scan. So if you can see here, upgrade is written, that is you need a pro version for doing a mobile device scan. Web application tests, you can do it. Credential patch audit and all those things. There are lots of Spectre and Meltdown. You can see WannaCry and somewhere you can scan. So these are scan templates given to you by the Nessus by default. You can create your own scan policy as well. So whenever we configure a scan, so I will show you how to do it. If we go for a let's say basic network scan. So we see here these settings. We can put the scan name, that is let's say test, and we can put in the targets here, like we can say any IP address, okay, like say, or we can upload a list as well. We can upload targets, add file, and all those things we can do. Like if let's say we have a list of IP addresses, we can do that from add file here function feature. Okay, and we can give any range of IP addresses here. So once done, the credentials over here, like why do we need credentials is like sometimes what happens, website or let's say a network device, or let's say any server we are trying to scan, so it requires you to log in first, and then it can give you access to its services and all. So whenever you have to scan it, so you have to provide the login credentials so that you can enter that device, and then you can uh, the more services will be available to you, the more vulnerabilities you will be able to see. So that is why we provide credentials here, so we can do it. Let's say if you want to go with an SSH or with a Windows, we can provide the credentials, and then what a scanner will do, it will put the credentials where login form appears for the device, and then entering into the device, it can scan for more vulnerabilities. So plugins are the main building blocks of Nessus Scanner. So there are lots of plugins available depending on what kind of vulnerability it is. Okay, so let's say AIX local security checks. So in this plugin family, there are lots of plugin names here. As you can see, this is the plugin ID which you can use to reference these plugins. So if you double click over here, you'll get the details of what the plugin does. The remote host is missing a vendor supplied security patch for AIX critical security. So like this, there are many useful plugins. Let's say for cross-site scripting for Cisco devices, for Amazon AWS services, for DNS, okay, for F5 switches, FreeBSD. This is like Linux, operating systems, the Debian based operating systems. You can do HP, Huawei, Junos, macOS, NetWare. So all the major, you can say, vendors for network devices, you will see over here. You can also do SCADA, that is for the
Aditya, I think you're accidentally muted. Can you?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so there are lots of you can do for Solaris, Ubuntu, and there are lots of plugin families available here. You can use it and you can configure your scan. Okay, so I think this is clear to you guys. I hope so. And so these are by default given to you for web application tests. You can use this scan template. And if you see over here, you are given few plugin families which are relevant to a particular web application testing, because you cannot use a plugin for, let's say for example, which has been used for Cisco. So Cisco creates network devices like routers and switches, so you cannot use those plugins for testing a web application. Okay, for web application you will see cross-site scripting and all, so you have to while configuring a scan, you have to have some common sense and logic, that what plugins should I use for it. So it takes a little bit of experience. With the experience you'll come to know that yeah, I have to do this, I have to include this plugin and all that. So these are created default created plugins by the Nessus. Now if I want to do a scan which I have to create plugins by myself, then how can I do it? So let's say we are going to policies. We can create a new policy over here. Okay. Okay, new policy. So if we go to advanced scan, okay, it is asking for a, we can say, let's say web app. Okay, web app test. So web app test, we can write the name for this. And let's say the main goal is to show you guys how to configure your own plugins. So once we come to this plugin section, we'll see that all are enabled. So we don't want to include all of them. So let's first disable them first. Okay, so once disabled, now we have the option to select what plugins do we want. Let's say for example, if we are using for web applications. Okay, so let's think what can we do with web applications. What are the web application attacks? Okay, so let's say cross-site scripting. Yes, we know that cross-site scripting are for web applications. We can enable that. Let's see how many plugins are in there. So these are the plugins for Adobe products, for Apache, okay, for Atlassian. These are the vendors. So these are the, okay, you can see that there are lots of plugins available under just one family for CGI cross-site scripting. So like this, we can understand that depending on the scope of our pen test, that we'll be able to identify what sort of plugin families do we need. So this is very important while configuring a scan. So this can significantly narrow down your target and save time while scanning as well, because the more number of plugins you add into your scan, the more time it's going to take for the scanner to complete the scan. Okay, so once you do, so you can once you have selected the plugin, you can save it. So see, here you can see a web app test that we have just created. Now how to use it? Let's go to my scan. Okay, let's say we're gonna do a new scan. Okay, so we are going to use the one scan template we have defined ourselves. So here we can use web test. See, we can put any you know, IP address over here, and then like we did back then, we can just save it, and our web app test is created with the policy that we just created, and we can launch it from here. So of course it's not gonna uh, get successful because we don't have mentioned any IP addresses, and so it will just return the status as error. So I guess this is the basic overview of what we're just gonna stop it. This is just a basic overview of what Nessus is all about. There are lots of stuff you can do when you explore it, but I think I mean, in such a short time, I'll be able to. Okay. So I think the Nessus part is over. So if Kaushik, if you want to.
Yep, sure. So guys, we're gonna quickly run a poll. This is the first poll for today, and it's close to. We're just gonna run that for 2 minutes, and here on your screen. So, which of the following tools do you use for vulnerability management? And you can start voting. And if you feel there is something different, or some other tool which is not mentioned, feel free to leave your answers. Guys, don't message me directly. Can you message it to everybody so that other people can also see? Most of the messages you're directing it to me. Rather than that, if you say everyone else will also be able to see the answers. So I think I've got one answer from Neeraj who says IBM app scan. Then Kaushigan has said Wallace. Great stuff. Nandish, if you see the two option, if you click on the two option, it would give you an option to send it to everyone. If it doesn't, then that's okay. All right. Okay. Yep. Akinetics is already there. Wallace and Tripwire. Cool. And I think more than 80% of the people have participated, which is a beautiful thing. You just wait for on the last 10 seconds to see if there's going to be more. Okay. All right, that's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool. Thank you. So yes, again, I'm just sharing the results with you. So I think close to 68% of them have gone with Nessus, which is a brilliant thing. All right. Aditya, I'm just going to quickly run the program details, if that's okay with you. I'm just going to take 2 minutes. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, guys. Again, a brilliant workshop happening right now, and a brilliant participation from a lot of people out here. I think this is our record best that we've had so far. So I'm just going to quickly skim through the program. So like Aditya is doing a workshop. We have a 16-week program that AntWak does. And usually we run 12 weeks of core classes. And there are 4 weeks of soft skills, CV preparation and mentoring sessions. Just to have a flexibility, we don't run classes every day. It's just going to run over the weekends, that too just for 2 hours. So we're just going to have one on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. The highlight is that, like Aditya, there are going to be renowned experts. These are not teachers. These are not facilitators. These are working professionals who've been in the cybersecurity domain for over, 10 plus years. And all of our classes are live classes. None of them are pre-recorded. You will be given pre-reads before the class begins so that you can associate yourself more in the class. And some of the topics that we're going to be dealing with includes introduction to cybersecurity. We're going to learn about network security, cyber attacks, web application, incident management. And each of the topic is backed up with the tool that you're going to learn with it. And all these tools are hands-on, and there is going to be a project out of every tool that you're going to learn. For example, for network security, you're going to be learning about Wireshark, Nmap. For web application, you're going to be learning about Burp Suite, Zap, And also for incident management, you'll be learning about a lot of blue team training courses. In addition to that, you'll also be doing with digital forensics, GRC, identity and access, cloud security, threat intelligence. We'll also be doing SIEM tool for QRadar. We're also trying to do SIEM for Splunk as well, but for now, QRadar cyber threat intelligence will be coupled with the SIEM training. And all these courses are just for 49,999. I've shared a link in the chat window. If you use Aditya's link, you can avail up to 5,000 rupees of discount. And the highlight about this is that it's a lot flexible, and you are going to get to learn it from people who've been there, done that, professionals and not teachers. So all the experiences and all the things that you'll be learning in the session is all going to be about real-time examples. It is not going to be something which is just been there and just been followed up for 4 or 5 years. So I strongly recommend and I urge everybody to use the link that I've shared in the chat window and register so that you can have a brief talk with most of our academic counselors will be able to walk through you. So people who are into IT, who want to get into cybersecurity from tech support jobs, the service desk jobs, I strongly urge people to do this. And in addition, we're also tying up with a lot of cybersecurity companies, including startups and the big ones. And we'll also ensure that we offer you and guarantee you placement assistance. So if not a proper full-time job, we'll ensure that we'll at least try to push you for internships. So I strongly urge you to kind of check out this course. It's hardly going to take you 2 minutes of time. And yes, I'll get the screen over to Aditya for us to just have another important giveaway about a Nessus tool, and then we can conclude our session and probably take a couple of questions. So just keep your questions coming up on the chat window. Aditya, over to you. Thanks.
Okay, so guys, we have just seen what Nessus is. We have seen the demo of the tool. It's a community version. You can go for a pro version once your company allows it. So okay, so we have done the Nessus. So let's go ahead and see why Nessus is a gold standard tool that is used in the organizations, and that has been considered as a gold standard. Yes, there are several others as well, but Nessus has been around the block for, you know, for very long now. So Nessus is just a part of a big process, which is a vulnerability management process. So I'm just gonna walk you through all these what is vulnerability management process and some other terms as well, because uh, most of the times I have seen that there are courses regarding Nessus and other tools, but they don't give you a big picture, the end-to-end picture on how to do that, and why how to incorporate Nessus in a proper, you know, procedure and plan to remediate the vulnerabilities end to end for an organization. So I think this brief introduction about process, vulnerability management process, will be beneficial for you guys. But let's see. Okay, so what is the vulnerability management process? So there are, first of all, you need to know that why vulnerability exists, so that we think that there are developers who are developing it, still they are not competent enough, that they do some mistakes and vulnerability, just exists there. But that's not the case, because a simple software is written with multiple lines of code, like thousands of lines of codes from Java, C++, Python, whatever the language you want to name. So what happens, like, when all those lines of codes are there, then it becomes really difficult to try to get right at every point of time. So it's not possible humanly. So that's why vulnerabilities come into existence. So it's the nature of the softwares to have vulnerabilities. So we cannot do anything about them. What we can do is we can take precautions to, and we can take steps to remediate those. So vulnerability management program is starts with identifying the vulnerabilities by using Nessus scanner. Then once the vulnerabilities are identified, then we pass them down to analysts who are going to prioritize those vulnerabilities on what to remediate and what to not, depending upon the uh, infrastructure of the organization. So vulnerabilities also need to be categorized based on their severity, high, medium, low. So there are the parameters for that, CVSS and all that. CVSS scores and all that. Accordingly, they are designated as a critical vulnerability, medium, and low or informative vulnerability. So then again, the analyst has the job to make adjusted risk score in the terms that vulnerability that is identified as critical by Nessus has to be critical for the organization as well. You are understanding me? Because what happens, like, a vulnerability which is critical on a global landscape, on a global threat landscape, cannot be may not necessarily be critical to your organization as well. Okay, because there are different parameters at play in your organization, and whatever the software or access points that the Nessus is considering may not be available or may be very much secured in your organization. So there are lots of things at play here. It's a lot more complex. So adjusted risk score is definitely need of the hour, but most of the organizations are not following the standard. So that's why the process vulnerability management program is not efficient. So there are lots of points to discuss over here, but I'm gonna move ahead with this. So once analysts categorize the vulnerabilities, then it goes down to the system engineer. System engineer remediates the vulnerabilities by installing the fixes for it, patches that are available from the vendors. Once it is done, the owners comes back to the vulnerability analyst to run the Nessus scan to revalidate whether it has been fixed or not. Once it is fixed, the issue can be closed forever. And if it is not, then we can go ahead and look for the root cause analysis. So this is a brief overview of what a vulnerability management program is. So there are lots of slides, but it just talks about this only. So I'm just quickly gonna move ahead and show you. So we have seen how to configure the scans and all that. The scan perspective is something also need to be incorporated in the organizations. Like whenever we put a scanner, depending on the what position in the network we are gonna put it. Let's say we have internet firewall, internal network, that is company network, there is DMZ. So let's say we put a scanner in here. So we're gonna see some vulnerabilities that we for the web server. So in some other, we're gonna, let's say, 100 vulnerabilities in this position when we put the scanner we received. But if we put the scanner somewhere here inside the internal network, we'll see some other vulnerabilities, and let's say some subset of the vulnerabilities we might see for the web server. If we put the scanner over here, we will see another set of vulnerabilities. So these sort of scan perspectives need to be incorporated in the organization's network. So this is the thing which is also not happening on a very large scale, but that needs to happen. So we can make the difference over here. The analysts, the scanner maintenance. So the Nessus scanner needs maintenance, like you have to update its database as we discussed above. So it automatically does that. Obviously, the vendor pushes the updates for the database. So vulnerability scanning tools, just gonna quickly discuss that. Like Nessus, we have discussed. Qualys is another very popular one. Rapid's Nexpose is very good tool. I would say OpenVAS is an open source tool. So these are the tools like which are very general purpose, like for network, mostly for network and for web applications as well. But if you're gonna go for web application particularly, then Acunetics is a commercial one. Vega is one of the open source one. Nikto is also another open source tool for web application. I guess we have talked about this AntWak experiential learning program. I would suggest you please go ahead and avail the discounts. Remediating vulnerabilities we just discussed. So I just included all those points in detail on how the vulnerabilities are remediated, but I think I gave you the brief idea on how engineers remediate the vulnerabilities. Analyzing scan results. So unfortunately, we did not have that environment to scan with Nessus agent, but we'll surely work in the future to provide you with that hands-on as well. So there are lots of terms. SCAP is basically a terminology that is security content automation protocol. So it is sort of a standard that is being pushed in by NIST for so that we are sure that whatever we are referring to is the same thing as the person on the other side of the world is also referring to. So some sort of a standardized taxonomy. So let's say CVSS, we discuss common vulnerability scoring system. According to this, the vulnerabilities are assigned as critical severity, medium, and low. CCE is common configuration enumeration, provides us with a consistent language to use when we are sharing system configuration information. So obviously it is not in a human readable form. CPE is common platform enumeration. So these are some sort of words I just thought to include it. CVE is common vulnerabilities and exposure. So most of you have seen that a vulnerability is being assigned this CVE number. So CVE is an authority which assigns a number. Actually, CNA assigns. So basically, it's an institute that assigns the CVE number to a vulnerability, so that it can be identified and referred to. So here's a CVSS vulnerability, how it is calculated, depending on attack vector, access complexity, authentication, and confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So these 6 are the parameters on which it is calculated. So so this is for some other, this may be for some next for workshop. If we connect, then we'll definitely explore this as well. Because of limited time over here, so we are just going to go to the end. So interpreting CVSS scores. So like I said, so like whenever CVSS score, depending on scale of 1 to 10, if the score is between 1 to 3.9, it is considered low. Medium for 4 to 6.9. High score is 7 to 8.9, and whenever the score is 9 to 10, it is considered critical vulnerability. You can go to this website, okay, to calculate the CVSS score. So it is available over here. I'll just quickly show you. So this is if you go to that link, you can come to the CVSS score calculator over here. You can use all these parameters to calculate it. Moving on. So how to analyze CAN reports. So this is a part of vulnerability management process, which we already discussed. So thank you, I would say. We have some time for question and answer as well. Yeah, and apply for the AntWak experiential program.
Yep. We have one more poll. So that is right there. So yep. Which of the following stages, according to you, do you think are important for vulnerability management? And guys, I've already shared the link. I've also shared the documentation that Aditya had provided to me regarding the installation. I'll reshare it in the chat window if you guys haven't received or seen it. The document is titled Installing Nessus on Windows. I've just sent it right now. So you guys can check that out. The recording will be available to answer most of the questions. The recording will be available on the AntWak events page. So once you log into the AntWak website, it will go ahead and give you an option. As far as the PPT is concerned, the PPT is not accessible right now. It is only for people who have been a part of the bootcamp program, because that's where you get access to additional content with respect to whatever has been taught so far. Yes, and yes, the answer is pretty much correct. It's actually all of the above, because these are vital stages as far as vulnerability management is concerned. And I think there's been an even balance between stage 1 and stage 2. Also, bear in mind that Aditya is going to be a part of our programs in the future as well. There are going to be more of master classes. There are going to be more of webinars. The only thing is there are some tools which are open source, which we will try to go ahead and implement it in the near future, so that whenever an expert is teaching, we also want you to follow along. Okay, we just have a couple of questions here. Miraz has a question, Aditya, that what is the difference between CVSS and CVE score? Are both of them the same, or are they different?
So CVSS score is basically common vulnerability scoring system. Okay, so which I just showed you these 6 parameters. Once again, let me show you. So these are the 6 parameters depending on which. Okay, where did it go? Yeah. So yeah, so these are the parameters. Okay, attack vector, attack complexity, privileges required. Okay, so these are the parameters on which you can calculate a score regarding how critical a particular vulnerability is. So it gives them a score, but CVE is a body, okay, which assigns the reference number, sort of an identification number to a particular vulnerability. So you must have seen that a CVE number starts with CVE hyphen 2020 hyphen some 4-digit number. So CVE then hyphen is the year in which the vulnerability was discovered, let's say 2020, and then hyphen is the number that let's say a sort of a serial number for those vulnerabilities discovered in that year. So it's just that. So there's a difference between those. I hope you got it.
Right. We have one more question from Virendra. Can you explain, can you give us a brief about the vulnerability management stages?
Vulnerability management stages. Okay, so vulnerability management stages are, first is identification, where you identify with the Nessus scanner. Second one is when the after identification, then comes the triaging or prioritization. So when analyst prioritizes the vulnerability depending on the organization's infrastructure. So then the third one comes the remediation thing, that is a system engineer or some other engineer, system admin, who deploys the patches. Once it is done, then comes revalidation of that vulnerability. That is when it is fixed, then again the cursor moves to the vulnerability analyst to revalidate by scanning from from vulnerability scanner that whether it has been fixed or not. So these are the stages of vulnerability remediation. So these are basic stages.
Thank you, Aditya. We'll just take our last question. What is triage, and what's the difference between false positive and false negative?
False positive and false negative.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the alerts or the vulnerabilities, but yeah.
Okay, so false negatives are not much of a trending thing. I mean, you won't get much of false negatives, but false positives are definitely you're gonna look out for. False positives are the things. Let's say someone told me that today the rain will today it will rain after 1 hour. Okay, so the weather forecast told me that it will rain after 1 hour. So I prepared everything for the rainy season, but it was sunny after 1 hour. So the weather forecast was a false positive because it provided me with the wrong information. So that is a false positive. If if that makes sense to you. And triage is a small term, but it's very difficult to do. So triaging involves like trying to assess the level of vulnerability and then assigning it to a particular analyst, level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on the skill sets of the analyst and all that. So triaging is basically how you assess the vulnerability and assign it to a particular analyst to remediate it. So all these processes are included in the triage process. Yeah.
All right. I think, yes, that's about it. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Aditya, thank you so much for your precious time and knowledge. And I'm pretty sure that it was a very useful session in terms of learning about the tool. This session might have a part 2 as well. So I'd recommend you guys to check on the LinkedIn as well as the AntWak.com website. Also, we have a dedicated cybersecurity channel for AntWak. So would strongly recommend you to join on LinkedIn, so that you guys can get more updates around the different courses. So apart from that, thank you so much for this wonderful attendance. I really appreciate everyone who's come through. And also I've shared the link, I've shared the material. The recording will be available in a day or two. So would request you guys to just have a quick check on it. And Aditya, once again, it was a pleasure having someone like you on board. Thank you so much, and we look for future collaborations as well.
Yeah, thanks Kaushik, and thank you for the participants to come in. And yeah, that's it.
All right, guys, stay safe, take care. Thank you so much for the meeting. Cheers, bye.